Well, a little surprising to see that the Kazakhs kind of probably slotting in response to that Galio ban. I have to think that that might have been a little bit of a mistake out of eUnited just because I don't know what else they're thinking they're going to prioritize. Are they suddenly going to grab Caitlyn? I'm not sure what else is first pick worthy other than like an Elise or something like that.
Well, it's not going to be the Caitlyn. They banned that one away here, so it's not that. But they do ban away Pikamu's Corki, so they continue to kind of double down on this fact that Pikamu will be the person that can eventually get them a lead or something, as well as banning away something that Fabi. Well, I guess he didn't really dominate the lane facing game #1, but he felt very comfortable on picking that one for. Like you mentioned, the Cho'Gath is still available. The Elise will be banned away, so Big God's showing that they fear that. We'll see if eUnited go for the Cho'Gath pick like they did in game #1, and they do.
Yep, so they set up a situation where they didn't want to end up in a jungle disadvantage, I guess, because Rek'Sai does all right into Elise, but still kind of favored for the Elise matchup after the Kazakhs has been banned out. Take away a couple of the other priority picks, just making it so that there's more OP bans. So if one goes through, you guarantee to get it. This time around, it's the Cho'Gath. I kind of understand that if you're looking at it, because Dandy has had a huge influence over these games. Licorice, while he's done great, hasn't been dominating on his own. It's off the back of teammates' help. So I can sort of understand being more scared of Dandy at this point than Licorice. So I gotta say, that Cho'Gath pick looked absolutely disgusting in game 1 once it got a little lead.
Well, now you have Chris in for RF Legendary, so if you were afraid of that top side of the map, you bring in a different look of top laner, you have the potential to put him into a matchup that he may be able to turn around that RF Legendary wasn't necessarily as knowledgeable or capable of winning that lane matchup in. You could go for a Jace pickup, although they are going to prioritize the Rek'Sai again for Surti, and the Kalista again for the side of Fabi.
I like that overall. The bot lane looks pretty good. If they do go that Alistar early on, you can grab the Thresh in response here. If you move down to the second round of ban phase without them grabbing the Alistar, maybe it's worth throwing it in there just because even if, I personally don't think it's a super strong pick. You haven't been able to beat it up in lane. It's been a monster in the late game, so I can understand just wanting to get them off something that's working for them.
Well, they are going to look like they prioritize the Gragas for the side of eUnited this time around, so this is the first time we'll see Danny on something different, but they are going to want it going back to the Alistar pickup here for Zeyzal, so if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it here. They got a huge beefy frontline once again from the side of eUnited.
Yeah, eUnited showing that maybe this is the patch of tanks. We were talking about the rise of tank junglers, but with Cho'Gath showing up on the top side now, if Alistar comes back in the meta, we are already seeing a fair amount of Braum again, some Tom Kench. So it looks like there might be a new melee support joining them. Big Gods Jackals not going for the Thresh, instead grabbing the Braum. Obviously not a bad champion, still strong into Alistar, but can't super abuse it just with ranged auto attacks and great gank setup.
Well, it's kind of a similar look to what Big Gods did in game #1, although this time around they're pairing with the Kalista, so instead of having a dominant lane with the Caitlyn matchup, now you have a little bit more engaged to kind of follow up with Surti if they're going to be playing that more aggressive kind of proactive style again. So previously you've been falling so far behind that your proactive play style hasn't been kicking into gear, but now you're once again in the situation for eUnited. You have so many tanks on your front side, you need damage fest, but this time it's going to be from GBM. The LeBlanc is still left open, we'll see if he gets targeted down in this phase, and you still have Deathleaf pickup to come in, but Big Gods Jackals have, you're saying, hey, I don't think this is ban-worthy, but they banned away Misfortune this game.
They banned away the Misfortune. Gonna have to see what eUnited wants to grab. The Ashe into Kalista has always been a fine matchup. They could do that again if they really choose to. They played it into the Caitlyn previously, so Big Gods will probably want to throw another 80 carry ban. This time it's Jhin, and what's scary is now the LeBlanc's up. You see eUnited kind of setting up the LeBlanc pick with that Kassadin ban. That's really what they're looking to do. It's one of LeBlanc's worst matchups. Now you take away that, they ban out the Gnar. So it looks like if Big Gods Jackals are not willing to play LeBlanc here, they're going to be getting another serving of what they got in game 1.
So let's see if Pikamu is going to play that one, or if he's going to stick to the Trident 2 of the Syndra pickup. The LeBlanc is being hovered by Big Gods Jackals. Makes me think they're going to have to take this one away, but Vladimir is open, which is something they've banned away for a while. It doesn't do the worst into the LeBlanc matchup. Early on, the LeBlanc can bully it around, but we'll see what the response is here.
Yeah, the LeBlanc matchup with Vladimir isn't the end of the world, but it is something I think generally you would want to avoid it. You are down a fair amount of pressure, even if you sometimes survive in laning phase. They can always go with the Cassiopeia, has not been banned out. GBM, like we talk about how he likes to play a lot of standard mages and become a teamfight monster. Haven't seen a lot of that this series, but I'm sure he is more than capable about busting that out. Actually going to be the Morgana pick.
Ooh.
So we're going to see a Morgana mid lane against this LeBlanc. An old school kind of counter pick to LeBlanc, something that we saw way, way back go back to MSI 2014.
Yeah.
It wasn't called MSI back then, I believe.
No, it was the first MSI.
It was the first MSI in Tallahassee,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
that's
scenic Tallahassee
Oh
Park.
boy, yeah.
One of the most exotic locations we've been at LOL Esports. But there's going to be a Morgana pickup here. I thought they might be setting up for the Lissandra. That was something that GBM played week 1, and we brought it up in the last game. Although they do want to go in for the Tristana on the bottom lane too, so now you have a later game hyper carry. You have a Morgana who deals a decent amount of damage in the early to mid game, a lot more of like kind of a wave clear bot. But if you lock somebody down with that crowd control, you can definitely poke them down for a bit. But Chris now, he's going to be picking an AP threat in the top side of the map. They're going for the Rumble, so they have Rumble on LeBlanc, and they're real only AD threats, or I guess technically the Rek'Sai in the jungle, then the Kalista that was not super effective against a tanky frontline last game.
Overall, I think Big Gods Jackals comp is decent. I mean, there's a lot of people who can stack MR on the side of eUnited, unfortunately, just because of how tanky their frontline is, as well as having the Morgana to kind of give that spell immunity for a little bit. But I think the bigger thing is it feels like Big God kind of got forced into playing eUnited's game plan a little bit here. The Misfortune ban, I can understand you're not comfortable with it. You don't want to give that to him again. The Jhin ban is a surprise for me, just because you're giving up that LeBlanc pick. And Peckinwolf is a fine LeBlanc player. I've seen him play it before. He can do fine on it. That's not the problem. But it's opting into this kind of situation that eUnited is setting up for. They banned out the Kassadin, so they're saying, Telegraph, we're going to go for the LeBlanc pick. And if you take it, we have other things prepared. Like you said, the Lissandra earlier in the split, and this time around opting for a Morgana pick. So it's something that they were very aware of the situation they were setting themselves up for, and they had more than just Kassadin prepared as a counter pick. And that's why it's a little scary if you're Big Gods Jackals, because you're playing into a situation that they have specifically prepped for, and you might not be quite as ready for it.
Right, and this is just another facet to eUnited's draft phase. They're busting out a Morgana pickup, which is something that, well, we've seen it more recently, but it's been a support role. It hasn't been in the mid lane matchup. So going, back into the history of GBM, the fact that they could draw upon this experience and draw upon his knowledge in these specific matchups to get something that like you said, plays into their draft phase.
And we talk about playing into the draft phase. I mean, they are a super short range composition here on the side of Big Gods Jackals. Kalista, one of the shortest range AD carries, and then you have Rumble, LeBlanc, Rek'Sai, and Braum. Not really much range on that side, so a lot of people are probably going to be in range of these Morgana ultimates, so you have to be very concerned about clumping up near turrets and things like that. And GBM very, very aggressive on champions in teamfight situations. You can expect him to be flashing forward, grabbing Azanya's early on to make sure he can survive when he does it, but it's a kind of composition that I think will work very well for eUnited.
eUnited has a ton of AoE CC too. You have the Cho'Gath Rupture and Silence. You wind up having the Flash Body Slam and the Explosive Cast coming out from Danny in the jungle this time around. You have the Alistar with the Headbutt Pulverize combination that's already been a huge factor for eUnited's team composition. So for the side of Big Gods Jackals now, you have a different look to your composition. You do have a little bit more of a team fight kind of presence. You do have the Rumble ultimate, the Equalizer to rip through onto people, but you kind of have to get those advantages in the early game to solidify the fact that you can go toe-to-toe in a later game.
And that's the problem, is solidifying those early game advantages. Because once again, Big God Jackals do have some tools available for them to win the early game. Rek'Sai, a little bit more aggressive of a jungler early on. The Rumble having good matchups, generally speaking, into melee champions. Haven't seen into the Cho'Gath yet, has a little bit more sustain in a lot of tanks, so it could be not as strong as we're typically used to seeing Rumble into melee tanks. And then the bot side, once again, you have the Kalista, generally favored in the matchup, though Tristana is a good matchup again. But you have the gank set up with the Braum and Kalista. So they have the tools to make things work in the early game, but we just haven't seen them able to execute on it yet.
Right, and it hasn't been for the fact that they haven't been trying.
Oh, absolutely
Just
not.
the fact that, I mean, they've continuously been making plays, even though they've been at gold deficits and such. It's just that, minor little things, like we mentioned when we were talking about the jungle pathing from Surti in game number 2, was going for that early level 3 on the Rek'Sai. Dandy countered out, smited away that the Scuttle Crab, but the fact of the matter was that Big God Jackals bottom lane saw an opportunity to blow summoner spells early on and pushed up super aggressively, so they weren't able to convert these advantages they're trying to set up as a team. So even though Big God Jackals are making plays and playing aggressively and trying to do something, the communication, or at least what it looks like coming across in game from eUnited, is stopping them at every point.
It's going to be their last chance here. This time locking in the LeBlanc, the Rumble, one of Chris's best champions. Hopefully that's able to find them an opening, because otherwise eUnited is going to be able to sweep through the series.
History may repeat itself. This is the semifinals rematch from last time around in the Spring Challenger Series playoffs, where eUnited was able to take a 3-0 victory against Big Gods that time around. This time around, though, we'll see if it's going to be Big Gods Jackals trying to upset the #1 seed as the #4 seed. They're going to have 3 back-to-back wins in order to have to try to do that once eUnited, even if they do slip up a little bit here, have a bit of a cushion built up for themselves.
That they do. So we'll have to see who's the focus this time around. Dandy does not have that early game skirmishing power that he had on the Kazakhs picks the previous 2 games. So he'll have to coordinate with his team to find these openings. Gragas often considered bringing the CC. The laners need to bring the damage. But, I mean, we saw him coordinate very well the first game.
Yeah.
Even though he was on the Kazakhs, it was all set up with the rest of the team. There was not much individual play. And if he can replicate that in this game, might be able to snowball eUnited for the 3rd game in a row.
I mean, normally you mentioned Gragas brings CC, his laners bring damage. What if they bring him both? Because we saw Cho'Gath being no slouch for damage in the earlier stages. They got a dive off on RF Legendary when he was playing the Jace in that matchup at level 5 or level 6, I believe, because he feasted, but he wasn't able to get the kill on him. So level 6, Cho'Gath has a lot of damage in the Morgana in the early game. You know, you can level up the Tormented Soil, just have a lot of natural wave pushing power. But in addition to that, you know, you land a Dark Binding onto somebody. It's a lot of damage out of the Morgana pickup.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Gragas can bring the CC, but if someone else already has it, he's pretty happy about that too, because then you can have these easier body slams, may not need to blow your flash right away on it. If a binding lands, if a rupture lands, if a headbutt pulve combo lands, all that stuff just makes Gragas' life that much easier. So, of course, you can always bring your own CC, but if you don't, Gragas has some.
He's got some too, so if you're buying, he's in. This time around, though, we talked about junglers in game 1 and 2 kind of being with the creative pathing coming out from the Rek'Sai. We'll see if Surtee's able to do that again this game, or if he's gone for something more standard, as he does wind up going from the Raptor camp over to his red buff, now making his way down towards the bottom side, maybe going for an early blue. We'll have to see. But the big one I want to see is now Peek and Move versus GBM. We've seen GBM be on the split push in the LeBlanc in game 1, be on the side lane pressure, roaming Galleon, and really get the ball rolling for eUnited. This time around, he's kind of on anti-carry duties, trying to keep this Peek and Move LeBlanc at bay.
Yeah, already doing a decent job. You can see how easy the wave clear is for Morgana. He already pushed in the wave once, went down into that bot lane river and dropped a ward in the Pixel Brush to make sure that there's no early aggression coming in on the side of the Rek'Sai. And then he just goes back into lane, W's the wave, pushes all that in. And like you said, trying to keep this LeBlanc locked up. It's one of the big snowball threats here on the side of big Gods Jackals, and the Morgana pick working specifically to try and stop that. They also have, you know, some playmaking in the bot side, like we were saying, but it's tough because for the most part, Alistar is a fantastic kind of zoning support. If you try and go aggressive, he kind of just plays a big front line.
And we see Dandy trying to get aggressive on Surtee in his jungle here. Does wind up having the body slam to keep him at bay, and decent trade damage here. Actually, Licorice getting pretty low, but actually is the one to force the flash out of Chris.
Oh, lands.
One rocket lands. Does he have another one charged up? He does, but Licorice has the health potion ticking, so he's going to survive.
Dandy showing up in the top side, probably going to try and help escort this wave in. They need to be a little bit careful, just given the fact that they know Rek'Sai is up here as well. Need to be careful about the 2v2. They're actually going to go for it.
The CC chain lands, but like you said, there's not a ton of damage coming out from my early game Cho'Gath. The flash on Burrow coming in from Surtee. First blood goes over to the side of big Gods Jackals. A teleport in the mid lane actually being canceled out by GBM as well, as fights go down all across the map. Bayano taking a lot of damage, actually using the Ignite on Zeyzal just to kind of scare him away. But trades all over the place in this game.
Whew. I gotta say, eUnited, finally their aggression gets turned back around by big Gods Jackals. Early on, as we see, hold on, Licorice teleports right into mid lane where they're still there.
Oh yeah, actually dealing a lot of damage to Surtee. He's gonna be able to pick up a kill, but has the flash available. We'll get away from Chris, who's overheated. Bottom side of the map now, Zeyzal has a ton of spears stacked up in him, but the heal from Deathly's Tristana keeping him alive.
Aggression all over the map, Tom. All summoners down for eUnited in the bot lane. Looks like they wanted to take that early trade win that they had just moments ago and actually turn it into a kill onto Bayano. They're not actually able to find that one. As we see this teleport again, he did not actually know Surtee was still around. Teleports onto the wave. Surtee comes back to try and instantly get another kill on Licorice. Not quite familiar with all that damage that Cho'Gath can do. Finds the kill, barely able to stay alive with that flash out there. Good job by Licorice, but had to go home again. Picks up some MR, heads back to the top side. Actually still fine in CS with all that scrapping in the early game. Anyways, like I was saying, Dandy took a skirmish against Rek'Sai early on, which is usually something you should not do as a Gragas, but because GBM on Morgana has so much of a pushing priority against the LeBlanc, he knew that GBM was going to be able to back him up first, so he actually forced Surtee to tunnel over the wall, also aware of the situation. Where they messed up was that they know he's up there, and instead of just kind of going to push the wave in as a unit, having the Cho'Gath cue the wave with the Gragas, probably doing enough damage to get the wave in the turret, they go for the kill. And that's where they mess up because Chris was relatively healthy, Surti was in the area, they collapse and they get that kill back. Still only a 1-for-1, so it's not the end of the world, but some of these plays that were working out so well for eUnited in the past games, not going so hot this time.
Now, with Licorice being able to kind of get the saving grace kill back onto Surti, also double buffs now, so he's kind of zoning Chris away from this wave, so he's continuing to keep up that CS advantage, and he does have that Rumble. Usually will get over tanks in the top lane, but Peek and Move able to slip away from GBM. So he's going to want to get in the distortion forward. The chains will land. The root follows here. The silence comes down from Cho'Gath. The rupture will land down onto Chris, but Peek and Move's able to connect with the chains. And that's double buffs on LeBlanc.
And this is what we were saying. Peek and Wolf has a pretty good LeBlanc, able to find an opportunity to get out of lane against this Morgana. Roams up to the top side, catches Licorice heading to the river to put a ward down. They get the kill, and that double buff transfer that you were talking about was going to be pretty annoying for Chris. Not only do you get the double buffs off your laner, but now you get them onto the Morgana, who's going to be able to use this to hopefully deal with some of this pushing pressure by GBM.
Yeah, so LeBlanc now going to be able to trade pretty freely here as we see the passive going out. Just a ton of damage coming on the GBM. Spell immunity will wind up keeping Morgana safe through that black shield as the chain corruption will not stun her and lock her in place. But still, just the amount of damage that Peek and Move is able to trade back down just with the spells in addition to these auto attacks.
I mean, the huge thing about red buff that, some people overlook is, like we always say, that life regen. So Morgana lands a binding, puts the W down, drops her black shield to negate some of the damage that's being traded back. But when you look at the health bars at the end of the day, GBM has to blow his potions to stay healthy. Peek and Wolf kind of just regens up naturally. And now GBM on the back foot having to play further away from Peek and Wolf.
And more importantly, Peek and Move has already been able to make an impact on the map. So, the utility of this Morgana pickup to kind of keep the LeBlanc kind of stuck in lane and not let her roam around that hasn't panned out in the first 7 minutes. Not saying that he completely nullified the pick in general, but Peek and Move is getting advantages for himself and for his side lanes that he wasn't able to get in games 1 and 2.
That is the big concern. One thing worth noting is you mentioned the hyperscaling of Tristana. So Morgana isn't completely an anti-carry pick. I mean, that is her primary role in this comp. Obviously, they baited the LeBlanc pick and they had the Morgana prepared, and it does well in lane. But once you transition out of laning phase, it does have a very nice target to drop that black shield on in the Tristana, who can hopefully kind of run wild in these team fights, assuming she is going to be pretty strong. So it's a really nicely thought out composition by eUnited, the way that they baited the Morgana pick and they tie it in to the Tristana, but not the start they're hoping for sure.
It's also not the same kind of look to eUnited that we've really seen. And we mentioned the power of, the 3 core members from eUnited. Licorice, Deathly, and Zeyzal. Out of all of them, Deathly, while he's kind of served his purpose going even or slightly ahead in these lane matchups, in the bottom side 2v2, he hasn't necessarily been the carry for the team. Historically, it was, either Fox or Gilius running away with that in the spring split. In the summer split, now we have GBM and Dandy and Licorice kind of stepping into the carry position. Now this is a composition built around Deathly, so we'll see a third style of eUnited in these 3 games.
That's the big thing. Like you said, Deathly was mostly known as the utility player. He obviously has great stats to back him up, but a lot of that is, as we've seen in the first 2 games, great team coordination out of eUnited, and everyone ends up looking better in a situation like that. Here we see a big fight breaking out down the bot side, though.
Yeah, good flash engage from Surti as a teleport is coming in from Chris. The Equalizer rips through the side of eUnited, and they have to try to back away. They've already locked up onto Zeyzal, so the Alistar will fall. The teleport being channeled in for Licorice will wind up being canceled. Actually, it was GBM and Licorice, both of them utilizing the teleport. So they both get canceled here as Big Gods Jackals capitalizes.
Really nice timing there. Zeyzal had not hit 6 yet, so he's not able to play the front line that Alistar generally wants to. Gets caught out of position, doesn't burn his flash running away. They're able to melt down the still squishy Alistar, win that fight. eUnited could not quite disengage. Dandy did not have the barrel that he needed, so it would have been hard to find it. And now with that kill, Big Gods Jackals is going to keep this push going. They're going to grab the first third of the game.
Yeah, so they group up as a unit of 4. They take down the first tower, and now they have themselves about a 2,000 gold advantage. So Big Gods Jackals already getting things they didn't have in game number 1, including a winning fight here in the early game, and a preemptive teleport now coming in. They have Chris as their top laner.
Right, so you see a great teleport in. There's the Gragas ultimate trying to knock everyone off of Zeyzal. Not quite able to do it. He was on top of all those line slows, the Braum ultimate, the Rumble ultimate. Licorice and GBM both cancel their teleports. Probably a good call overall. They would have just teleported in. Maybe the fight gets really scrappy and they pick up some kills, so it's going to be really hard to win that situation overall. and end up trading the top turret out for it in the long run. Still, obviously a great play out of Big Gods Jackals now, 1,000 gold in the lead, and finding some gold on the very important members. Being able to make sure this Cho'Gath's not getting out of control. The LeBlanc has gotten going. A lot of good stuff out of this team so far.
And while Big Gods may have lost out on their top tower in that trade, eventually they do get the first movement on the map to put Fabi and Biano on the top side here, so they will get a little bit of tower damage traded back. By the time Deftly and Zeyzal make their way up to this top side. Did you mention also, importantly, Zeyzal still not level 6. Biano and Fabi both level 7, so experience advantages now in this duo matchup, in addition to the 11 CS advantage and the extra assist gold on their bot. You see Dandy continuing to move around the top side of his map. Now this is Big Gods Jackals. Ball's in their court. They've been the ones to make proactive plays while they were still behind in the game. Can they keep up this level of proactivity now that they have a lead, and are they going to be able to hold on to it, because they couldn't hold on to a lead in a comeback last series?
I mean, that's the thing, is that we talked about Big Gods Jackals forcing a lot of plays in the first few games despite being down. Like you said, this time actually having the lead, how well can they convert on these plays? Because a lot of them were good ideas, but we didn't actually have to see the execution that well because eUnited had such a lead it didn't matter. If Big Gods Jackals can find the same plays conceptually, but actually execute on them here with the gold lead, they can actually have a pretty good chance of kind of running away with this game. I mean, LeBlanc will get to a point where they have a really hard time dealing with her in the side lane out of eUnited. I mean, Morgana in a side lane isn't the craziest thing in the world. We've seen Morgana tops and things like that, but the important thing is how her gold stacks up, and you see her behind right now.
And you mentioned the fact that GBM will eventually slot into kind of a secondary protection role for Deftly's Tristana in that matchup, but not necessarily known for a split-pushing threat. You'll wind up having LeBlanc going against the Cho'Gath. Might be okay, but then you don't want to deal with the Rumble because you only have one person that's really adept to split-push situation. But it looks like they might be trying to make that a non-factor. They're jumping on the Licorice in this side lane matchup here. Surti does have the Prey Seeker, so Licorice is going to flash over the wall, but Surti's going to be able to follow after with the ultimate. Chris is coming on in, and he's no longer overheated, has a rocket charged up, but Licorice is going to be able to walk away from that.
There you see a really nice path by Surti, finding an opening onto Licorice, who have been pushed up in that long lane. And while they do have wards in the bot side, they're relatively forward wards up in the river. And he's able to wrap around from mid lane and actually find that gank onto Licorice. They get the flash out. This, of course, means that eUnited answers up on the top side, go for an invade for this red buff steal.
eUnited, though, they are behind in gold in this one. They can't necessarily tell that from being in the state of the game that they are right now, and will continue to try to play as aggressively as they have in the previous games here. We saw Dandy and Zeyzal on the top side of the map, kind of uniting to steal away that red buff because they knew that Surti was on the bottom side of the map. So they're still continuing to, you know, utilize their position around the map to try to keep themselves in this game and execute the game plan that they want to, keeping Deftly safe. He's gone back and picked up a Zeal in addition to his Berserker's Greaves and has a BF sword already. So while Fabi had advantages early on, even though they made the first movement on the top side for Big Gods Jackals, you know, they've evened up the Tristana CS deficit.
Well, here's the lane setup that you're probably expecting to see for a lot of the game now. Fabi and Biano now in the mid lane. They have Pig and Wolf splitting up in the top side and Chris down the bot lane. And this is what they're going to try and use to find some openings on the map. So this is kind of where Big Gods Jackals wants to be at this point in the game. Like you said, though, it is only 1,500 gold advantage, so they're not out of the woods quite yet. They need to keep finding these plays, but they've done a good job. They got the flash out of Licorice. A repeat gank will most likely find a kill. They also, both people have the double TP. Or excuse me, Peckenwolf does not have a TP. eUnited has the double TP, so that is one thing in their advantage, whereas if Peckenwolf is splitting all the time, he might not be able to join into a fight. Whereas Licorice will have some backup coming if he gets ganked in the form of GBM.
Yeah, both of those teleports are now available after the double cancel from the bottom side of the map. As you mentioned now, eUnited sending Zeyzal into the mid lane match to try to kind of match Fabi here, and they're going to be going for an engage here. As Daniel, the explosive cast will land onto Biano, as definitely leaps in from the side, but they went after the target that is going to be Fates called back in by the Callista, and even though the explosive charge goes off, does not take down Biano, but does open up this mid lane tower.
Really nice play out of Dandy there, realizing that he's not even actually aiming for the Callista, goes for the Braum right away. Braum was in the middle of casting his ultimate, which means he can't get his spell shield up. Gragas is a horribly annoying pick to play against Braum because that spell shield, or excuse me, the wall that comes up out of the Braum is just such a blocker for your ultimate. But if you can find opportunities like that and play around when you know he's going to be dropping his ultimate to disengage, you can actually find really nice Gragas ultimate still. And there you see it. Dandy with a great timing on that ultimate, grabs them mid-turret and Dragon.
Yeah, so they're able to convert on that one, but at the same time, Big Gods will be pushing with Pika move splitting on the top side, and they got the Rift Herald here going down as Surti and Fabi are going to be doing that one for themselves. United kind of know this is happening, but it's only really Zeyzal and now Licorice in the air. Tried to use the blast gun to get over the wall. They're trying to keep Surti from picking it up, but he will be able to grab that one. Now Zeyzal and Licorice are in the fray, but the rest of eUnited really hasn't come to play yet. So Surti is going to pick up a kill, actually go down as Fabi picks up a kill on the Licorice. Now Deathly's jumped in over the backside, hopped back out on the other side. Very low health bars all around here. GBM's able to pick up a kill on the Fabi. Zeyzal somehow still alive in this fight. Will finally go down. Chris is going to want to flash over the wall, but Tristana hops back over the other side. And at the end of the day, I think it was just a 2 for 3, actually going in favor of eUnited.
That was such a scrappy situation there. Licorice getting a little bit further ahead of his team. I'm sure we'll get another look at that one, but he goes down early into the fight. And he blast cones over. I don't think he knew what he was getting involved in necessarily. It actually does look like they had a ward. Might have seen that one. And there, Zeyzal and Licorice doing a great job frontlining, buying time for the rest of the team to get involved. That Rumble Equalizer not actually being able to hit that many people definitely goes over the wall into Fabi. Realizes he's getting pretty low with the Kalista stacks getting back onto him, so he gets out of the fight. GBM comes in, hits a really nice binding for cleanup. His ultimate was not quite off cooldown, so this would have been the perfect Morgana ultimate if he could have found it, but not quite able to do so. Still finds the correct binding, and then as Pick-and-Wolf was over the wall trying to get out, you do a little bit of do-si-do, definitely jumps over to get the final damage, and then hops out as well.
Well, no Soul Shackle available for GBM in that fight, but United still want it coming out ahead, so now the gold count has kind of been evened up. GBM, though, going to get jumped on here in the mid lane. Surti and Bayano just charging through and leap onto the LeBlanc. Teleport from Licorice is going to be canceled, so Zeyzal is going to have to flash away over the wall, but the Rek'Sai ultimate's going to follow the chain. Does not land from LeBlanc, though, so it looks like Zeyzal will get out alive.
Good play out of Big Gods Jackals, not relaxing after a skirmish around the Rift Trail goes badly. They find GBM pushing up a little bit too far. They go onto him, but at the same time, eUnited keeps up on the top side. Yeah,
Dandy's going to get a good body slam over the wall into a cask and donates the kill over to his AD carry in Deathly, but the Rift Herald has been summoned in the mid lane, and Zeyzal got out with his life, but now he's going to try to defend this one pretty much all by himself. Does have Licorice coming around the backside. He's going to want to jump it down onto Bayano and Surti. They're trying to keep this tower alive. The teleport's coming in from GBM from base as well. Rift Herald still about half HP, though. He's a little distracted with some minions, but will eventually... No, turns around, swipes on the Licorice. eUnited keep the tower alive.
Not bad. I'd say overall it's definitely worth a teleport to keep a turret alive, especially at this point in the game on your mid laner. Got a little bit dicey there. Zeyzal got very low, almost focused down. But now that top people getting caught out.
Definitely jumps into the fray and immediately has to try to flash away. Now Pika joining the fight, flashes forward. And the first kill is actually going to go on to Surti as he picked up a kill on the Dandy. Now definitely going to get stunned up from the Braum passive. The Poros explode everywhere, and Surti picks himself up his 4th kill of the game.
So greedy out of eUnited there. They found the pick off on the top side, and the Fabi, Big God, of course, responds mid with that Rift Herald push. And then once they get forced out, you said, you know, how they teleported in, the people in the top side don't respect that fact. They're actually camping, looking for a fight, and they just get collapsed on so easily by the side of Big Gods Jackals. Dandy goes down right away, loses his flash, definitely gets a nice buster shot to knock back the LeBlanc chain, stop it from proccing, but there's still so many people chasing him down. He ends up dropping as well, and just a huge overextension on the top side by eUnited there. Not happy with just the kill and protecting their mid turret.
Yeah, United maybe getting just a little bit too excited for kills at this point in time. The gold lead does swing back in favor of Big Gods Jackals. Now the side of Big maybe getting a little too greedy for that mid lane tower as a binding will go a little bit wide to the right, and they're not able to capitalize on a kill on either Peek and Move or Chris.
Both teams getting a little too scrappy right now. Just some itemization things to point out this time around. Licorice actually going for the Abyssal Mask because a lot of magic on the other team as well as a lot of magic damage on his team. So a great pickup there, something we didn't see in previous games when he was the primary magic damage threat. This time with the Gragas and Morgana all getting close range with him, they'll be able to use that passive very effectively.
We already got a Leandri's Torment though on the opposite side here for Chris, so giving him a little bit of magic penetration himself. No magic lethality as a stat in the game yet, but going to be getting a little bit of extra HP percentage burn to help rip through targets like Zeyzal, like Licorice, and like Dandy, who are going to be quite tanky. We also wind up having Gunblade on LeBlanc, in addition to a very tanky Rek'Sai going for the Spirit Visage as well as a Aegis of the Legion going into a Locket now.
That's one of the things I was about to point out. One a small saving grace for eUnited is how many of those kills ended up on Sir T, who is going this full tank Rek'Sai. So while that does make him a very annoying frontline threat, then in the sense that eUnited has to deal a lot of damage to get through him, at least it's not a LeBlanc who's unanswerable in the split push. That would be so much worse to have 4 kills on LeBlanc. Instead, she's the one sitting on 4 assists.
Well, she does still have a Gunblade to her name. So
oh, she's plenty strong.
She's plenty strong, but as you mentioned, the teleport disadvantage by not taking that Summoner spell for Pika move may be a factor as this game goes a little bit later on. As Licorice has his available, GBM still on cooldown for about a minute and a half.
And one thing I'd say is that even though eUnited has been on the back foot for the large majority of this game, their vision control has been decent this entire time. You see in the top side how many wards they have in the river and in the side lane rush around mid. Bot side has been largely controlled by big Gods Jackals, given that dragon spawning, and that's where they're focusing. But at least eUnited is staying active and trying to punish things like this push.
Ooh, Licorice going to utilize the Rupture, but the Fate's Call goes in onto Braum immediately. But now Kalista getting locked up in a teleport response here from Chris. GBM's going to pick up the first kill of the fight on the Pika move, though, as he went a little bit too far forward. Now Big Gods kind of has to turn tail and run, but Chris is going to fall down for a double kill. Definitely joined the fray a little bit late, so doesn't get any kills or assists, but it's a 2-for-0 in favor of eUnited.
Great job by Zeyzal in the top side of that fight, basically 1v1ing the Kalista, keeping her out and off the frontline members of eUnited, who are now going to try and turn on the Baron after this push. This might be a little greedy. Sir T still alive, has Smite available, and Flash.
A little risky, but they might be trying to bait out a fight because they know that they have multiple members in the advantageous situation. Bayano on the backside, though, does not have the Braum ultimate available. They're focusing down on the Baron. Sir T is going to get headbutted away from Zeyzal, so there's no threat whatsoever for a steal.
And one thing that we forgot to point out with all these Cho'Gath changes is the fact that his objective control is still super strong. Before we get into that, let's take a look at this fight. You see Zeyzal opening up on the top side against Kalista, just 1v1ing, and during this time, Chris ends up TPing in, but now he's in the middle of the fight by himself because Bayano and Fabi have been pushed out by the 1v1 of Zeyzal. So this fight actually ends up being a 2-for-0 right away for eUnited. They're able to transition that into the Baron, where they're able to use that Cho'Gath ultimate to provide some extra true damage bursts onto the objective, comboing it with Dandy's Smite, making it very hard for Sir T knowing when to get in, as well as struggling to find an angle. They're able to grab the Baron. Big God Jackals find a small constellation prize with the Mountain Dragon, but now eUnited's back on the map and trying to push this objective advantage.
It might stem the bleeding a little bit as now they won't have a Mountain Dragon to back up the Baron buff on the side of eUnited to take down some of these towers that are still left on the map. They've only taken down 2, so there's still an outer tower on the bottom side that we are going to see them prioritizing early on here. They do have a Tristana now with an Infinity Edge and a Static Shift, so you're going to be starting to rip through these towers with that explosive charge. And the rest of eUnited are just kind of playing support duties. You mentioned their vision control being extremely strong in this game. Now that they have the Baron buff secured, they're transitioning it down to this bottom side to make sure they can rotate between mid and bot.
Yeah, Licorice joins to be part of the front line attack onto this turret, just giving some room for Deftly to push in, and Morgana teleporting in under the turret.
Yeah, but it looks like the Big Gods want to try to go for the fight. Equalizer already being utilized here, but now GBM's going to pick up a kill onto Bayano, who just kind of got thrown into the middle of the fray here by an explosive cast. So this Dandy Gragas pickup is working out pretty well for eUnited, and this Baron buff has netted them now 2 towers and a kill.
And I love the way Licorice used his ultimate in that fight. He had Sir T sitting right in front of him, so he doesn't get greedy as we see. Hold on, Peckwolf getting jumped on. Flash forward by Zeyzal.
Yeah, eUnited might just be trying to win the game right here now with this Baron buff. They're forcing Big Gods Jackals back into their own base. They zoned away for an inhibitor tower, and it's just been like domino effect. Every single tower on the bottom side has fallen. The inhibitor now being focused down, and they just can't break the tanky front line of eUnited. Sir T's going to want to utilize his ultimate to dodge out on some of the damage, but Zeyzal's able to pick up a kill. Now they do end up having Bayano respawning, so eUnited have to back away, but that was just a series of catastrophic events for Big Gods.
I mean, these guys know how to end a game. You give them any advantage, they'll take your arm off. There they grab a bunch of kills and an inhibitor down the bot side in a 5v5 situation that they just force underneath the bot inner turret, excuse me.
You see a CC chain landing down onto Chris over the wall as eUnited may have been forced back from the bottom side, but I guess they're not done yet. They're just going to rotate up. They have an Ocean Drake on their side, so a little bit of regeneration between the 2 lanes. That's enough for them to brute force down another tower. They've gotten 4 towers off of this Baron buff and an inhibitor. That might make it 5.
Yeah, they're not done yet. No reason that they really need to back off here. They're so tanky in the front line. Big Gods Jackals throwing all their ultimates out, just trying to deter them from this push.
Yeah, but they're not quite done yet. The tower will barely stay alive. Zeyzal goes back in, gets a huge, massive headbutt pulverize combo. Definitely is able to pick up the first kill now. Leaping into the backlines as the tower falls. This Tristana is on fire, trying to take down very low members of Big Gods Jackals, but instead they're just going to focus down on the inhibitor.
Was literally on fire, had an ignite thrown on her, but she's able to stay alive just fine. Did not receive any attention during that fight. That's why we talk about how strong this front line is for eUnited. Dandy is so far in front of the team that Big Gods Jackals kind of have to hit him, and then he just turns around with a big body slam after they dropped all their ultimates down to deter that push. And that whole time, definitely just hitting away on the front line, able to grab the one kill. Almost had a reset opportunity if he could get onto Sir T, could not quite find that angle. Instead, playing the objective game, they grabbed the inhibitor.
Yeah, and now eUnited all of a sudden find themselves surging out to a 6,000 gold advantage. So that Baron power play was absolutely massive. It net them 2 inhibitors, it net them 5 towers, it net them a multitude of kills. That's already at least 4,000 gold just in objectives, not even counting the Baron itself.
Huge swing out of eUnited, just never letting up as soon as they get an advantage. Here you see that mid lane fight. eUnited posturing very aggressively around the turret. Big Gods Jackals feel desperate to do something about it. Dandy goes in onto Fabi, just kind of throwing that ultimate. Everyone starts focusing him down. Then you see the turn re-engage, and this front line goes in so aggressively. Even GBM getting involved with his ultimate. Definitely is just, like we said, unfocused this whole time, hitting away. He jumps over the wall to kind of get onto Bayano a little bit, but he didn't tunnel on Sir T. Some people get that bloodlust. They see all the resets available. You know, Fab definitely not falling prey to that one. Instead, being a good AD carry, hitting those turrets.
I feel like you're trying to tell me something, Mark. I would tunnel in on that. I'd go for the reset.
I mean, I would too. That's why I'm saying this is impressive. That looked like a kill to me if he wanted to go completely crazy for it, but he holds on to his flash, doesn't want to lose that one. They're playing to win the series, not to make cool plays.
Well, that's the thing too. You mentioned the fact that eUnited, now we have a different look at them. This is kind of like a composition built around definitely in the later stages of the game. So he knows that he's, you know, one of the more priority targets if you're the side of Big Gods Jackals to wind up trying to take down. At this point in time, he's gotten the full Energizer build online on Tristana. He has a Vampiric Scepter to help keep himself alive. So as long as he's able to just sit in the back line and rain down pain, even if he's only picking up assists, he's doing his job well enough. Now 10 kills to 8. Looks like eUnited are going to be focusing on the last remaining inhibitor from the side of Big Gods Jackals. GBM has already deleted Sir T, so as many kills as this Rek'Sai has gotten, he's unable to stay alive against this Morgana pickup who's gone for the Leandri's Torment, Zanya's Hourglass, has a Morello Namicon. Just everybody from the side of Big Gods Jackals seems as soon as that Baron buff had gone down in favor of eUnited, they just scatter all sorts of places. Looks like they can't even really cohesively keep their team together as eUnited will just dive through on the Nexus towers. This might be one of the fastest best of fives we've seen in the Challenger Series. This game under 28 minutes. They're taking down Nexus towers. They might be going for the Nexus. They're going to be moving on to the final.
And eUnited complete the sweep 3-0 in 3 very dominant games. This one a little bit slower starting. Big Gods Jackals found some opportunities, but once eUnited got that Baron buff, they ended this game.
eUnited just basically coming out of nowhere with that victory. We thought Big Gods Jackals had finally, found themselves a formula to stem the early game tide from eUnited, to keep them at bay, and they got themselves a gold lead. But all of a sudden, just one Baron, one push, Big Gods Jackals crumbled apart.
I mean, that's the thing, and the mark of a truly great team is we saw them sometimes overextending, but they're hungry. They're always looking for where their next advantage is. And against a team like Big Gods Jackals, who they're able to outperform in a lot of these situations, that they actually are able to just end the game as soon as things start rolling in their favor. It's that kind of snowball downhill effect. You get the first play, you get the second play, and next thing you know, the game's over.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact of the matter is we saw Zeyzal really stepping up this game. I mean, it's kind of like an interesting thing. On eUnited's side, you saw a different player on their team kind of, taking control of the game and making, being the big deciding factor. Game 1 was Dandy, Game 2 was GBM. Game 3 here, we saw Zeyzal in that mid lane fight was basically the big reason why that Big Gods Jackals fell apart. The fight goes in favor of eUnited. It was I believe a 2-for-3 or a 2-for-0, I'm sorry, in that fight, because he zoned away the Callista, and they were able to transition that one into a Baron that they took.
I mean, yeah, that fight in particular, we sung Zeyzal's praises a fair amount during the previous series that we had on the last week of the regular season, and his Morgana play was phenomenal, which is great now that they're picking the Morgana. It might end up being a flex pick later on, who knows, but you know, this time on the Alistair, showing that he is super strong, and that's really what really set them up for this victory, was that team fight in the mid lane.
Yeah, and that turns into a Baron buff, that big Gods Jackals, like we said, that as soon as that one goes down, they really didn't know how to respond to that one. And we see here, they were trying to push on that mid lane tower. They got so low earlier on. And this is the play we're talking about with Zeyzal on the backside. He completely zones away Fabi, completely zones away Biano, and just lets the rest of eUnited wreak havoc.
Yeah, there you see, I think, you know, Chris thought he was going to be teleporting into his team and ends up kind of alone in the middle of the rest of eUnited. They focus him down after they already took down, I think it was Pick and Wolf in the mid lane. So just an overall great team fight out of them, really nice target selection, and then a good call to go for the Baron. I thought it was being a little over aggressive, given the Rek'Sai was up with Flash and Smite, but they have the Cho'Gath ultimate to help kind of make sure they have that true damage burst. It's going to be really hard to actually get a Smite steal. Really smart heads-up play out of eUnited, showing that they're practiced with that Cho'Gath pick, even though you and I might still be a little unfamiliar with everything it's going to do in the game.
Yeah, that's true. The fact of the matter is, once they solidified that objective control, once they got that push going on, they didn't relent on the pressure. Even though Big Gods Jackals looked like they're not going to push into our inhibitor tower. They won't dive us through this, even though we've lost one member and used our equalizer. They just kept going. And then even after that, they got forced away from the inhibitor when the respawns came in for Big Gods Jackals, just rotated into the mid lane and just took that tower and that inhibitor.
Well, that's what we were saying. And another example, I didn't quite get to touch on the game, but I love the way Licorice just uses ultimate to chunk out a frontline member. He just bit Sir T for 1,000 damage, forces him out of the front line, makes it easier for the Tristana to snowball through. Understanding, you know, in certain compositions, how you can use that Cho'Gath ultimate. It doesn't always need to be an execute on a backline member. It really comes down to how it fits within the rest of the team. And he just showed great mastery over a champion that, you know, has only been relevant for one patch so far.
That's very true. And you do mention the fact that this is a team effort. So we had lots of great performances from eUnited today. But we really want to recognize one player who stood out above the rest to earn our player of the series vote. And that person today was GBM.
Yeah, he had a monster performance. Game one, his LeBlanc pick was, you know, snowballed through Dandy's early aggressive playmaking, but with that pick was able to start running wild. Game two, he was the guy who got the team going. Big Gods Jackals were trying to force plays in the side lanes, and he was always there to shut them down. And then game three, he was kind of the pivotal pick of the draft. They set up the LeBlanc pick for themselves. Big Gods Jackals react to it, take the LeBlanc pick away. They have that Morgana counter pick prepared, and he's kind of fitting into the comp as well because they have a Tristana late game hyper carry that they can then throw Black Shields on. Overall, great champion pool out of GBM for this series, and really helped set the team up for victory both in-game and out of game.
Yeah, 3 different picks, 3 different looks to GBM, so kind of breaking the mold that we expected to see from him. But, you know, just coming out very, very impressive stuff. And although GBM was our player of the series, I got to welcome somebody else to the desk here. He was pretty hungry for this victory himself. Licorice, congratulations on the 3-0 sweep.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, you guys just kind of came into this one. You had a whole slew of different picks and everything with the new patch and everything. You guys were coming up against Big Gods Jackals for what seems like, you know, the millionth time in the Challenger Series. How was your mindset kind of coming into this 1 versus 4 matchup?
I mean, we kind of all expected that we would be able to win, but like you don't really want to go in with that mindset. So we just like went in, we're going to play our own game, and we knew that we would come out with a victory if we all played well.
So we have to talk about the Cho'Gath pick. Obviously, new patch. Everyone knew it was pretty strong, getting a lot of focus in solo queue. First time I'm seeing competitive play. So tell me a little bit about what you like about it, why you guys picked it twice in this series.
I think it's really good. A big part of it is that you can't actually really counterpick it because you can flex it into 3 different lanes, or jungle and mid lane, I should say. And then also it just has a really strong lane phase, and it's just a strong front line throughout the game.
So the big change of it was, of course, the E. Do you feel like that's where all the new power comes from? Because he had a change a little while ago with the ultimate being able to stack up on champions and those kinds of things. Was this just like a little buff that put him over the edge, or would he have been fine before, and this is let's finally giving him attention now?
I think that, like, even without the E change, I think the Cho'Gath was going to come back. It's actually a champion I was looking at before the E change, but then they changed the E, and I was like, wow, this is going to be really strong. We should practice this for sure. So
worked out pretty well for you overall. Speaking about the rest of your team, it did feel a lot like a team game, especially game 1 and game 2, even game 3 to an extent, where game 1, Danny got all you guys snowballing, and then game 2, GBM was all over the map with the Galio teleports. And being that they're 2 Korean players, what's the communication like with them? Because it seemed very, very impressive, the level of coordination between the 3 NAX rookies now from last split and them synergizing well.
It's actually really good. We don't really have any problems with communicating with them. It's like So if we want to make it play top, I'll say like we should make it play top, and then they'll respond in English. But if they're just doing like a mid jungle 2v2 whatever, they'll just talk in Korean, and we'll just kind of like nod and play, you know. So
Familiar with that?
Yeah, well, definitely had mentioned the interview last week that you guys, the Koreans had a couple of visa issues. But you came into this one, or visa work to do, not issues. Sorry, you came into this one. You guys seem to kind of be all on the same page. So you're making your way to now your second Challenger Finals, and you have either Tempo Storm or Gold Coin United on the opposite side. So I got to ask you now, who do you think you're going to face in the finals?
I think it's probably going to be Gold Coin United, but I think it's going to be a really close series. So I think it's going to be 3-2 either way.
So we're in for 5 games, which means you guys want to tune in for a lot of games tomorrow.
He just wants as much information as he can get. That's what it is.
You can't really blame him for that.
No, not at all.
That's
I'm
a
just
really
he's like,
good
I
idea.
want to watch the games. Yeah, sure.
Well, you guys threw out a lot of interesting picks too, so you kind of want to see what's going to unfold on the 7-14 patch. So I do have to say congratulations on the 3-0 victory, and we will see you next week in the finals.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And with our series complete, let's take a look at the updated bracket. Like I just said, 2 Licorice on the desk. eUnited has punched their ticket to next week's final in the Battle Arena, and their opponent, however, has yet to be decided. Don't worry, though. We won't have long to wait to receive an answer to that question, because our remaining squads of GCU and Tempo Storm will face off in our second semifinal tomorrow night.
Definitely going to be a closer matchup than tonight. I think even before we actually saw how this series ended up resolving, it was just something that we had seen over the course of the regular season, where for a little while it looked like Tempo Storm was the de facto #2 team, and then GCU kind of did their patented GCU thing at this point, where they ramp up over the course of the season, and by the end they're beating eUnited, still the #1 seed, and like you said, had a little bit of troubles with the visa, potentially not being able to practice as much. But at the end of the day, GCU does seem to be ramping up and potentially ending up once again as the #1 team in Challenger.
Yeah, well, this is another rematch of our semifinals from the spring slate. This has kind of been a repeat bracket, but all these teams have really been stepping up this time around. You heard from Licorice already. It's going to be a pretty close series. Doesn't know exactly how many games it's going to be. He still feels it'll be an all-United finals. Maybe he's just hungry for revenge from last year.
I'm sure that's a little bit of it, given that they got beaten down by GCU, and then they had a rough time during the promotion tournament. So I'm sure eUnited just wants to get back on the stage and kind of prove themselves.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. That matchup is coming up tomorrow, and that's going to do it for us here tonight. So on behalf of myself, Mark, and of course, the entire Challenge